Martin Sellner is one of the most prominent figures in the European identitarian movement. Born in 1989 in Austria, Sellner founded Identitäre Bewegung Österreich in 2012 and has since become the face of what is often called the New Right. He is best known for popularizing the concept of remigration, remigrating migrants mass migrated to Europe, and he has also advocated for the preservation of European identity and ethno-pluralism. Sellner has openly acknowledged a past involvement with nationalist and neo-Nazi circles as a teenager, which he says he has left behind years ago. He has also been linked to a major controversy, including receiving a $1,500 donation in 2018 from Brenton Tarrant, the Christchurch shooter. This led to his house being raided, data being taken from him, investigations for possible terrorist connections, and it has also followed him into today by lawfare, debanking, and other measures to break him. No charges were ever filed, but he is guilty by association. His critics, the mainstream media, left-wing organizations, and anti-extremism watchdogs, they accuse him of being a dangerous extremist who repackages racist and far-right ideas into modern intellectual language. They claim that remigration is essentially the same as ethnic cleansing. It's just dressed up in policy, they say. They also say that he promotes the Great Replacement so-called conspiracy theory and that his movement contributes to polarization and radicalization. Sellner himself rejects these accusations, condemns violence, and insists that he is fighting for freedom of speech and cultural preservation in a Europe that he believes is under pressure from mass migration. Martin, welcome to Raw Report. I want to start with a dissident question for you, because in the light of Norway's Police Security Service 2025 National Threat Assessment, they're highlighting anti-government attitudes. And they've been doing this for the past, I think, 5 years. And they talk about particularly far-right circles as a potential threat to democracy and national security. So what kind of anti-government ideas or attitudes do you yourself hold?
I don't have any anti-government ideas. And I think that what they actually mean is not a threat to democracy, but they mean a threat to their power. So what we're spreading, what we're representing is, I think, the will of the majority. We want to fix the broken migration system. We want to start remigration. We finally want to open a free and serious political debate. And that's what they're afraid of. So their goal is censorship. And when you talk about government people, it always reminds me of this beautiful sentence from We Like Vendetta. I think a government should be afraid of its people, and the people shouldn't be afraid of its government.
I couldn't agree more. And when we look at what's happening today, or what's been happening these past few days in Iran, looking at the people rising towards power, well, the occupation, the Islamic occupation of their parliament and their country, it's not the first time, but I think this time they won't give up, no matter how many of the people the Islamic occupiers are trying to murder. Do you think what we're seeing, because this all comes together with X, Europe trying to censor X. I think our Labour Party here in Norway, I think yesterday or today, said that they want to ban X as well, just like the UK and Australia said they want to ban X. And X is a key for us to see what's happening in Iran. The mainstream media is not reporting on this because, courage is contagious. And so what's your assessment on this? Because we see, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how the European Union and our Western governments treat dissidents or people that they do not agree with, to have this open, free, uncensored debate, making examples of people. But what do you think, can you see in the future the scenario of how we get rid of these demagogues that are on top trying to rule over us against our will? Will it be an Iran situation, or can we resolve this in a peaceful manner, do you think?
That's a very good question. I've actually written a book about it. It's called Right-Wing Regime Change, because I think at some point we might need a patriotic color revolution in Europe if they shut down all means of democratically and organically changing the whole country. And you see this already in Germany. You saw it in Romania, where they just basically revoked a democratic election. In Germany, you have certain AfD candidates who are not allowed to run for election, and talking about banning the biggest opposition party. And what you brought up is very interesting. And I remember vividly the Arab Spring. Back then, the European leaders, the liberal leaders, were praising Telegram. They were said, X is a bastion of democracy. And against the will of the Arab leaders, they said, we need to provide those people with free internet. And they just need to be able to organize themselves and talk to each other. And the same thing they want to shut down right now in Europe. And I think that's the real key to a patriotic change in Europe, a democratic change. I don't think we need any intervention or money from the outside. The only thing we really need is freedom of communication. And imagine this, in the past 15, 20 years would have been no censorship in Europe, no debanking, no imprisonment of activists like Tommy Robinson, for example, or the civic destruction of activists like Dries van Langenhove. I think the debate would be totally different. So what we're seeing right now is a fake democracy. It's the outcome of decades of censorship and suppression, but I think they cannot do this forever. And the bubble will burst quite quickly, and we might see the same thing as we saw in the communist Eastern German GDR, that these walls of silence, these taboos, these gatekeepings breaking down. And then I think we're going to see a completely different debate. And with this different and open debate, we're going to see different governments and different policy. I think we're living in the final stages of this totalitarian system.
I really, really hope so, because this has gone way too far and people are being treated as toxic matter. You have been treated as toxic matter, in fact. And the first major raid for you came in, I think, 2018 or 19, and it was linked to the Christchurch donation, that being this terrorist that donated to your organization. And then by default, that means that you are a terrorist. At least that's how the logic of these demagogues work, and how they can make you even more toxic than you already were. It's guilt by association. We've seen it in most European countries, I think. And so what I'm wondering is, when did you first experience government being persecuted by a government, and perhaps from the earlier raids or association claims, what was the starting point? Did it start before this, or was this just an explosion?
You know, it's very interesting, because we found a generation identity in 2012, which is still, I would say, the biggest patriotic youth movement. And it's very different because it doesn't fit the cliches they have about the evil right-wingers. We show our faces, we're normal people, we only make peaceful, sometimes even funny activism like street theater. And we are growing enormously in all of Europe, and they really wanted to take us down. So they demonized us, they took away our bank accounts, they censored us, but it did not work. And then even before this Christchurch farce, in 2018, there was a huge trial in Austria. There were like 15 house raids, 20 days of trial, because they wanted to ban us as a criminal organization. Because they claimed, for example, a banner, Islamization kills, is incitement to hatred. So they claimed we are doing incitement to hatred as an organization, and they used a law that's normally used against the mafia, against our movement. But in the end, after 20 days in court, we were acquitted. So they couldn't ban us. And then they tried the next step to link us with international terrorism. And this was actually really crazy, because this terrorist and murderer in Christchurch, who obviously is a criminal, he made some donations to different right-wing individuals, patriotic groups. I think he did it because of his strategy of accelerationism. So he wanted to take down and damage those groups to advance his own cause of violence. And then this donation that we received, and we had no idea who this guy was, 1 year before his terrorist attack, was used to create a claim of a terrorist organization. There were house raids, and in the end, I was acquitted. There wasn't even a trial. They said all of this investigation was illegal, but obviously my reputation is forever tarnished. I cannot enter the United States, to Canada. UK has banned me permanently, and up to date, I've lost 116 bank accounts in one of the biggest consequences of debanking. And that's
how many?
116 bank accounts, payment gateways, PayPal, Stripe, you name it. It's really crazy. Like a bank account for me lasts 2 to 3 months maximum, and then I have to get a new one. So that's the situation, the free and democratic West.
And all of this because they want to take you down, and they have, they've created these farce, as you say. We've seen that happen here as well. We had this huge terrorist attack in 2011. I'm sure you're familiar with Anders Behring Breivik.
Yes.
He shot a lot of youth on the labor camp island, and he also blew up the party offices in Oslo. But the fact that he was a very active person. He's utterly insane, by the way. I've seen him. I've sat in his trial. Don't remember if it was 2021, I think it was. He's utterly insane. So I'm not going to dig into his personality per se, but he was very active in different forums of different papers for a long time, commenting. And so the paper that I worked for, Document, they had a forum in which he was active, just as he did in the mainstream media. And when this terror attack happened, a lot of the mainstream media, they deleted his account. You could not find his comments in their forums. No transparency.
Interesting.
What Document did was publish all the comments so people could see what he had commented. What this resulted in was, and also because it's a Christian conservative media house, the mainstream media and also all of the politicians, the political parties, the left, they blamed Document for his action. Document and the only so-called right-wing party, which isn't right-wing at all, is a liberal party called the Progressive Party that we have here in Norway, but it's the most, I guess, to the right that we have in parliament. They blamed that party and this media house for radicalizing him alongside video games online. And so this smear campaign, it sticks. Like you say, you ruin people's reputation with this. We had no connection to him. And regardless, still to this day, in my comment, because I worked for Document, then I have all these people coming into my comments on X, for instance, calling me his sister, calling me a terrorist lover, all of these things. So it never goes away. And I'm not sure.
What's so crazy here, is if you look at this, like there are terrorists on every political aisle and every political side. You have Islamic terrorists, you have Antifa terrorists, you have eco-terrorists who blew up in Berlin, a very important part of electricity, and put a lot of people in misery now. And also, yes, on the right side, you have crazy people who abuse our ideas for terrorist actions. But only on the right, we are all blamed. Whenever there's an Islamic terrorist attack, the mainstream media says, oh, we can't blame Islam. Now we need to talk to moderate Muslims. We need to give moderate Muslims a voice. Yeah? They never do this in our case. And the crazy thing is, even when you look at Islamic terrorist attacks in all the forums and live streams, people are cheering. Antifa terrorist attacks are being praised. When Charlie Kirk was shot, there were thousands of people globally were celebrating. We don't celebrate this. We don't condemn it, but we are yet held accountable for that, or yet we are being blamed for that. So you see the utter hypocrisy here and how they try to use this tragic violence as terrorism to take down our ideas and our positions.
Yeah, and it's a very, I think, hefty tool for them to use as well, because the hypocrisy is staring you right in the face. It is what we say in Norwegian, a double moral.
Double standard, yeah.
Yeah, so, but they still do it, and they get away with it, at least for now. And you say you have travel bans. I would say not being able to travel to the UK is a blessing right now, because it is an authoritarian place to be. They are imprisoning people for merely writing things on Facebook. And, well, you know how it is over there. But also the United States. Have you had any progression in terms of having your travel bans lifted?
Yes, I'm working on that. I got the travel ban actually in 2019, so they revoked my ESTA privileges, which is a nuisance because part of my family is American. My wife is from America. So I wasn't able to visit them or accompany her when she visited her family. But now I'm working on it. Obviously, I didn't try to do it in the Biden era because this would have been futile. But I'm quite optimistic and hopeful that I can soon return to the United States of America. For the UK, I'm less optimistic. And, I even had a travel ban to Switzerland and Germany. So neighboring countries, they were blocking me when I give a reading about my book, Remigration. Suddenly these robocops march in, like this armed police, as if this was a riot, and then escort me out and push me over the city premises. So that's really crazy. Like they're using violence, using repression to hound down a book and an idea. But I think this repression at the moment is even a fuel for us. So as you said before, they get away with it. I think they got away with it. But right now it works totally against them because most people think, okay, they are slandering this lady, they're slandering this magazine. They're attacking this author, this activist. What is so interesting? What is so dangerous? I want to learn more. So that's, I think, is now really working in our favor.
And also we have access to more information now, like through X. And I think, what is it going to be? Grokpedia? Is that what Elon Musk is trying to create? Alternative to the absolutely horrendous Wikipedia. You never know what's true because if it says something bad about you on Wikipedia, you did something right. That's become my sort of mantra towards Wikipedia anyway. But I'm glad to see that you have some of your travel bans lifted. I think the UK is lost, at least for now. So I'm not traveling there. I don't have a ban. I've banned myself from traveling there because I don't know what I'm going to meet when I get to the airport. I have been dragging Keir Starmer through the mud. And I think more people need to do. What?
You've seen these huge demonstrations.
Yeah.
You see Rupert Lowe, Restore Britain, so many also activists, the online right. I also thought that the UK was lost for a while, but now there are really a lot of people who are giving me a lot of hope there. And I also have to say, I have to admit, like at the moment, if you look at these big demonstrations in the UK, they are the most active, the most rebellious people, because I haven't seen these demonstrations in Germany, in Austria, Norway, Sweden, Denmark. So I have to give it to them. I still have faith in all of Europe. I think we can turn it around. I think we can have a reconquista and save all of our continent.
I agree with you. I think we can turn it around as well. And I think the UK can turn it around, obviously. But as of now, I think Keir Starmer is very desperate. And I see I don't know how you feel about this Grok ban or ban of X, basically, because that's what they're doing. Like I said, the Labour Party in Norway is getting on board like they always do. They follow bad political ideas from other countries. They never decide anything for themselves. But they want to ban X now due to this like whole bikini mess, which is really about sexual content created by Grok of children or something like that, which I think is a ridiculous accusation. Did it happen? Probably. Can it be corrected? Yes. Would you need to ban X for it? No. Would you want to ban X? Would Keir Starmer want to ban X to kill off Unite the Kingdom movement? Yes, I think he would. And I think this is the perfect excuse to do it. And I think Europe is struggling so much with banning X. We've seen them struggle. They're still trying. They did actually make privacy illegal last year in 2025 in the European Union. So what is the climax here? Are we going to see a ban on X, do you think, throughout Europe? Or are we going to be able to take them down before we get to this point where they've scared us all into obedience?
First of all, I think it's really, you cannot, like the importance of X, is so big. It has changed so much also for the AfD because for the first time we can communicate. Also the reason why we're talking right now is X, because I saw your post, you saw my post. There's a network effect. And X for the first time in the history of the internet is a network where European people, patriots, white people can talk about their concerns, can network freely without censorship. And that is really a game changer. And of course they want to shut it down. They would love to shut it down. But for me, it's always like when there's spring is coming, all the plants are growing. Yes, you can rip out the flowers and try to trample on them, but you cannot prevent spring. And that's what they're trying to do right now. There's a spring of freedom of expression, of remigration in Europe happening. And X is a symptom. And even if they would ban it temporarily, it would come back bigger and better. And there's one big, another game changer, which is the United States of America, which is vetoing them, which is sanctioning European elites in Germany, in the UK, and telling them, no, you're not allowed to shut down X. And now the European leaders are in the same position as the Arab autocrats in the Arab Spring. They also wanted to shut down X, and then the EU said, no, don't shut it down. Your own citizens should be able to speak out. And now the US is doing it to them. And I love to see it. And the thing is, they're completely dependent to the United States of America, which in itself is a geopolitical problem. But at the moment, I'm very glad that Trump, that Vance, that so many people in America are caring for freedom of speech. I think at the moment they're caring more for us than our own traitorous elites. So I think they'll try it. I think they would love to do it, but I think they will not be able to do it and just increase our fire and the resistance even more by these attempts of censorship.
Well, one of the tools that they have is, as we've talked about, is to make examples of individuals, because it's a very powerful way to scare people into obedience. And you mentioned the debanking, the experience that you had with widespread debanking, in fact, with dozens of banking platforms like PayPal and Patreon closing accounts. And how has this affected your personal finances and activism, and has it intensified as of recently, or how is this evolving, and how do you survive? What are your advice for people who might meet this to be a statue of example for the elites?
Yeah, I have to say debanking is very effective. Also deplatforming. I'm banned from YouTube, from Instagram, everywhere. Like without X, you might not even know that I even existed. I was vaporized as in 1984. And debanking started in 2017, and since then took on speed. And I'm just rushing through all the banks. For me, it's a bit like in Tarzan, when you swing from one wine to another. For me, it's from one bank account to another. And I always try to have 2, 3 in the back to always reshuffle them in a way. But what does it mean? It means you cannot really plan ahead. You cannot create a financial structure. Obviously, you can never get a loan. If you don't have a bank account, you cannot get a loan. So things that are normal life goals for people, like building a house, building an enterprise, hiring people, renting a studio, and all this kind of stuff, becomes in a way impossible. You cannot create a normal commerce, a normal business when your bank accounts are always shut down. And I think this is a very malicious but very effective way, because they keep up the charade, the facade of a fake democracy, of a democracy simulation, because we don't imprison anyone. But with these methods, of slandering, of shutting down your bank accounts, of censoring, they effectively still cut you out. So that's has been very effective recently. But I also hope that we're going to see here new things like XPay, for example, an alternative. At the moment, I think a lot of businessmen understand, those who are ahead of the curve, that woke is dead, censorship is dead, and that also there can be earned money with new platforms, with real freedom of opinion. So the smarter people like Musk and many others, they are dropping the woke shares and they're buying into the remigration ETF. So I'm very optimistic. I think it was a very brutal time beginning from 2018, 19. Obviously, we had the COVID craze, but I think now it's getting better. As I said, the spring is coming and they cannot prevent it by tearing out flowers.
I hope so. Well, you're right. You can't prevent spring from tearing out flowers by tearing out flowers. You're very correct about that. And I hope that our European spring is in its early beginnings right now. But I'm also looking at the EU and what they have done, looking at the bureaucracy and the governments in the European nations, how they've also targeted politicians. The UK, they targeted Farage. They closed his bank account. And they've gotten away with doing a lot of these things for such a long time, and they keep doing them. So what are your aspirations for 2026, and how can people get on board? Like, what does it take? You've had, like you said, you have your organization, and I think in Norwegian we call it Generasjon Identitær. I know it's a branch in Denmark is doing really great. In Norway, I don't think there's a lot of people. I don't know. We're a weird kind of people. We don't ever do anything really. At least the masses are very comfortable, and having them become uncomfortable is really hard to get them out of the sofa and up and protesting or do anything really. I hope that will change in 2026. But what do you think is the key to engage younger generations and also older generations? Because as far as I can tell, Martin, the younger generation is already up there. They're out there. They want remigration. They want the nation they never really got to know. Because I remember what it was like to be Norwegian in Norway without mass migration. I'm just going to say it. It was a different country. And so a lot of these young people now rising, they don't know what that's like. They don't remember it. They have no experience of that. But there is the idea of it. And so how do you get the older people on board? Because the younger people are kind of hungry for that idea.
Yeah, that's true. The younger people are angry, and rightfully so, because their nation was stolen, their youth was stolen, their future is stolen away. And you're also right, a lot of people in the boomer generation, they did not really experience the results of multiculturalism. And now, very often, they live in a gated community. They don't take public transport. They don't go to a public pool. They don't have to go to school anymore. And when they see a foreigner, it's just the nice serving lady in the cafe, or maybe their nurse, so they have a very distorted view of the reality. Plus, very often they still consume mainstream media only, which is total propaganda. But it's a key. We need to wake them up, and we need to unite the generation. So I'm against the boomer-zoomer intergenerational conflict. It leads us nowhere. Just like the manosphere and the feminism fighting against each other, I think European people, white people, patriots, they need to stick together. They shouldn't be separated by these ideologies all across the West. I think the key is definitely activism, organization, and information. So these are the most important tools. We need to inform people. That's what you're doing with your magazine. We are doing on X. But we also need to organize them, especially when, for example, X is shut down. Might happen for a while. The internet is shut down. You mentioned Iran. They shut down the internet all the time. And if the internet is shut down and we're only online activists and our whole network is only online, then we're lost. So we need to create real life structures, real life organizations. And I really want to see in 2026 demonstrations like UTK everywhere across the continent. That's very important, and we need to get those people on the streets. They are there. In Germany, for example, 15 million people would vote for the AfD right now. In Austria, 2.5 million people would vote for the Freedom Party. The majority is there. We need to get them active, and we need to show them that you cannot save your nation by putting a little piece of paper into a plastic box every 5 years. That's not enough. We need to do more. And that's also our job as activists. We need to activate the people and get them on the streets. And that's also my focus for 2026.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I hope that I get to see you in 2026, Martin. I know there's a lot of happenings across Europe. And hopefully it will be like I said, a European spring where people do take to the streets and they do organize and they do get out there, and that we will perhaps see more conferences and more meeting points like we did. You mentioned COVID. Actually went to Vienna twice during COVID for this exact purpose. So I think that...
You took part in one of the demonstrations, the COVID demos?
Yes, actually I did.
Great. Thank you very much. Maybe we've already seen each other because these big ones around the Ringstrasse, with thousands of people.
Yeah, I don't think that was not the one I attended, but I did attend 2 conferences, and then we also did go out into the streets and marched and had like a set up stage, and there was speeches, and we had doctors over from the United States, and it was a big deal. I mean, we know that, and I know that you said you want to reunite people from all angles of politics and whichever camp they stand, but there's also this with the left, they don't want this to happen. So I think that if we can help each other in terms of showing up when something big like this happens, in whichever country, that would be a great thing, because that's what Antifa does. They actually bust people and fly people in everywhere. So maybe we should think a little bit more like that type of strategy, or what's your opinion on that?
Absolutely. They stick together. They also never criticize each other. I think that's also
Yeah.
something we need to learn on the right. There are some people which I maybe don't like personally, which are a bit more radical or a bit more soft than me, but I don't focus on attacking them. I don't like all this stupid online drama where we attack each other. I focus on my stuff, and I think our path is the right one. And I think in a marketplace of ideas, our one will be at the end the most effective one. So I think this concurrence between the right is also something very helpful if we don't start infighting, and we need to network. And that's exactly, I also wanted to mention this because you were talking about upcoming events, what we're doing at the Remigration Summit. We already did it in 2025. Eva Vladimir, who you also might know, was there and will be there this year again to give a speech, and many politicians, influencers, activists come, because we've been looking at exactly, as you said, what do the globalists on the left do? They always meet. You have Davos meeting, the Bilderberg meeting, all these kind of meetings. They have a great network. Everybody knows each other. The flow of information is very quick. So we also need to have those NGOs. We need to have those meetings, those networks. We need to create this structure, because separated we're weak, but united we will be very strong.
Which is, of course, why travel bans and debanking and lawfare is very effective, because that kills everything that is organizing. But I think that by speaking up, I think defending, like you say, not criticizing each other and actually defending each other and speaking up, and in this marketplace of ideas where the best idea wins, that more people come on board and do that will make a difference. Because if you look at, I like to use examples from the time I'm speaking right now, that is Iran. If you look at Iran, what they're doing, they are not caving. The occupiers are killing people. They are not caving. So I hope that courage is something that's contagious, moving along throughout this year, and that more people will start to speak up, because we really, really need it. And also, you mentioned being under the wing of United States, which normally geopolitically isn't really a great position to be in, really, but you're happy that we are right now. So am I. So I hope that with the EU demagogues getting a taste of their own medicine, having a travel ban, which I find extremely funny. I'm not going to lie. I really enjoyed myself when I read that. That this will actually result in some cleanup in the bureaucracy of the EU. But I'm not sure if it's the people in the EU or if it's the actual EU itself that is the problem. European Union, sorry, that's right on my mind. What are your opinion on the European Union? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't have the best opinions on the European Union. Everything I've seen from it the past decades was just bad. But I think it's very important. What you bring up here is a very important issue. So as you said, yes, being under the influence of a foreign power is never nice. And in the end, we European patriots want to have a sovereignty and freedom of Europe. In the concert of the big powers, we need to be eye on eye with any other power, and we should be able to defend our greater space. But at the moment, the biggest threat to us are our own leaders, the enemies within. And these are the European leaders, but also our national leaders. So we cannot put all the blame on the EU. It's the same with our national leaders, because if you look at countries who are not in the EU, for example, or the UK after Brexit, not much changed there. So I would say it's the globalist elite in our own government and in the European Union. We need to get rid of them, because I also think that the biggest threat still is the great replacement. Like an economic crisis, a government crisis, you can get out of that. And you mentioned Iran. We can look at Venezuela and Greenland. Yes, the people had a regime change in Venezuela, in Iran. It's on the way, but it's the same people, like they have a different government. And this is actually not as dangerous as a population replacement, because if this goes through, there'll be no chance in restoring Norway, France, and Germany. So what's happening now, it's the biggest ethno-cultural upheaval since 6,500 years. And these people responsible for that, who are importing massively migrants, naturalizing them, turning them into voters, bribing them with our tax money, these people are our biggest enemies and not people on the outside. So I really think we need to focus now on overcoming them, overcoming the EU if necessary. If you can transform it, I'm also fine with that, but I think at the moment, a more realistic scenario might be that the EU crumbles in the next 2 years. We create different alliances and federations. We start immediately remigration. We stop censorship, and then we slowly rebuild the whole thing, but on a better basis and with a better flag. Because I really dislike this blue flag with the yellow stars. I really don't like it. And I think the problem is the majority of Europeans don't like the EU. The patriots don't like the EU. They dislike it. The reputation is damp. Nobody will fight for von der Leyen, for Macron and Merz. Nobody. They are completely disattached caste who lives in the ivory tower in Brussels, filled with our money, repressing us. And I don't see any big chance for reform right now in this Brussels elite.
I always thought it was funny because Macron, his greatest wish is to get a European army, right? And I think it's a great example of how delusional they are, because every time I read that Macron wants to have a European army, I'm thinking to myself, in which language are they going to take their orders?
True, that's true.
So, it's a delusional thing that they're doing. And
probably would be English if you don't revive Latin. But also I think they should get their priorities in order. If your house is burning, think about buying a gun. You have to stop the burning house. And while people are talking about Greenland, yes, I'm also not a fan of that. But we're losing Paris. We're losing our own nations. And this is just way more important. So the national sovereignty and freedom is based on the national identity. And if this is destroyed, look at Vienna. In Vienna, the majority of pupils are Muslim. They are talking about the European army, about NATO, all this kind of sovereignty stuff. No, we need to talk about Islamization right here, right now, or in 20, 30 years, all these things will be completely irrelevant.
The replacement of the European population is a fact. We're seeing it happen in real time, and I don't care who says it's racist or who says it's a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy, and it's brought to us by the European Union, by Davos elites, and we all know it. So that is it's unquestionable what's happening. But at the end of this interview, Martin, I'm just going to jump into this question because it's a kind of not a tricky one, but it's something that's been haunting my brain for a couple of weeks. And I'm thinking, sitting there, and I look at all these migrants from Muslim countries coming into Europe. They're raping, they're killing, they're robbing, they're looting, they're torturing, basically. It's everyday terror for European citizens. And looking at the lack of penalties they get, you get harsher penalties for writing your opinion on Facebook or X in the UK than you get for raping a child and torturing a child. So my conclusion is that if we're going to use a picture that people recognize, I'm going to be as bold. I usually never do this, but I'm going to be bold and do it. I'm going to go straight to Hitler's Nazi Germany. And if you think about the EU elites and these supranational organizations that they're a part of, Bilderberger, the World Economic Forum, all of this, these are the Nazis. And then the immigrants, they must be these Nazis' brown shirts. I can't see it any other way, because why are they not being punished for it? Why are they replacing the population that don't want them here?
I have to say, I wouldn't use this metaphor because I think it's kind of a bit of a Hollywood cliche. Every evil person has to be look like that, Darth Vader, and so on. It's also kind of a brainwash, because if you look at communism, millions and millions of dead people, or Stalin at the communist enforcers, they were also very totalitarian. So we could also bring this up, but that's the basic premise of your argument, I completely agree with. I think that they are importing those people to have a Praetorian Guard in the end, to keep us down and to be better able to rule over the population. And here I want to bring something to your attention, also to the viewers' attention, which is very frightening, actually, if you look at it. So when the European colonized Africa and they created these nations, they always created the nations in a way that there was not a majority of certain ethnic tribes. So they could separate them and rule over them. And the Romans did the same. Divided impera, when they conquered a territory and they created the provinces, they created them in a way that there would always be ethnic conflict inside and never majority of a tribe. And this ethnic conflict gave them the power to rule from above. And in Europe, you had quite homogeneous nations, all of them quite individualistic, intelligent, impossible to rule, impossible to create a world state as long as European nations stay as they are. And now they're doing this by importing millions of migrants. So I don't know if this is a secret plan, but it makes a lot of sense. In 20, 30 years, Europe will be a failed state. It will be like Lebanon, like South Africa. We will fight turf wars here and there. We'll try to survive in this post-democratic gangland. And then the European elites, they can rule from above. Because whenever one nation rises, they can wrap up the migrant population and Islamic terrorist jihadi movement, just like it's been done in the Middle East. And in this point, then I think their rule will be completely unchallenged. So what they're trying to do is to kill democracy by democracy. I think that's the tactic, and we need to defend it, and we need to defend our national identity. And this is not evil or racist at all, because I grant the same right to every other nation. Everybody can have their country. I don't want to destroy the nations. I don't want to push anything on them, but we also have the right to stay the majority in our nation. And that is the right side of history. And I'm glad that people like Musk, the richest man in the world, also has understood this and is pushing every day against white guilt, against white genocide, as he said it, against the great replacement and for remigration. I think a lot of people are waking up to this truth, and this will be the future, definitely. The old ideology has failed. It's a lie. They are only based on censorship and fake morals. And we have the facts on our side, and we have the memes on the side. Even the humor is on the side. So our side is funnier, more truthful, and our side will be successful.
One last thing, advice for people who want to get organized but are kind of afraid to. What do you say to them?
I think you shouldn't be afraid of being called racist. You should be afraid of being called complicit in 5, 15, 20 years. And you should be afraid of your children, your grandchildren looking you in the eye and asking you why you didn't do anything while there was still time. Because now we have a time window of 15, 20 years till a demographic tipping point is reached. After this, it will be impossible, but now it is possible. So whether we like it or not, fate has decided to put us in this time frame, and that's why we have to get active. We have to understand that the risk of not doing something is way higher than the risk of standing up. And at the end, I also want to mention, again, like Dries van Langenhove is a guy who really did this for years and has been persecuted and tortured by these elites. So if you want to do something immediately, it would be great if you just check out his page on X, just put in Dries on X, follow him, and maybe support him in his cause. Remigration
is a moderate stance and mass migration is extremist. I think we can agree on that, Martin. Thank you so much for taking your time. I hope I see you this year, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much.